This week I heard a great story from one of our seminarians who was visiting Chicago. Adam, one of our seminarians, had a friend visiting him from out of town who had never been in the area, never visited Chicago, so they thought they would spend a day in Chicago. And of course, they wanted to see the highlights of Chicago. So they did a river tour, and then, of course, if you're in Chicago, you've got to eat Chicago-style deep dish pizza. So they went to Chicago-style deep dish pizza, and these are two young college guys. Any of you have been around young college guys know that they can eat twice their weight in food at every meal. So they basically attacked this pizza and devoured it, and then amazingly, there was still one piece left, and they were both full. You know, Chicago-style pizza is a pretty hearty meal. So they thought, well, you know what? Let's do this. Let's have this pizza, this last piece, boxed up, and then if we see someone who's homeless or someone who needs food, we'll just give that piece of pizza to that person. And so they boxed up the pizza, and they were walking around Chicago, and sure enough, after a little while, they saw a woman who was, very desperate, clearly a homeless person, a little disheveled, and they went up to her, they introduced themselves, they shook her hand, they told her their names, and they said, and her name was Maureen, and they said, Maureen, we just finished this pizza. We have a fresh, untouched piece of pizza. If you would like it, we'd like to give it to you. Amazingly, this woman, Maureen, said, someone else just came by, and they gave me half of their sandwich. So I've already eaten. Maybe you could find someone else to offer that pizza to who actually is still hungry. I think it's really an amazing story. And if you think about this woman, Maureen, what a great offering. Because she could have saved that pizza for later on in the evening. Hunger always comes back. Or she could have saved it for the next day. But she was concerned that there was someone else who was hungry, and so she wanted that pizza to be given to someone else. She made this offering hoping that someone else in need would benefit from her sacrifice. She made that offering hoping that someone else would benefit from her sacrifice. I believe Maureen is a beautiful image for us today of this young boy that we hear about in sacred scriptures. Here we have this young guy, and they've been with Jesus for a while. They're starting to get hungry, and one little fella had the forethought, or his mom, who knows, to bring a lunch with him. No one else has food. It would have been very easy for this young guy just to say, you know what? They should have thought. I'm hungry. I'm going to eat this food. But he didn't. This young man, just like Maureen, wanted to make an offering so that other people could benefit from his sacrifice. Now really, he didn't know what was going to happen when he gave those fish and bread to Andrew. He didn't know, maybe the apostles were just going to eat it, or everyone would get, who knows? He didn't know for sure what would happen. But he wanted to make that offering so that other people could benefit from his sacrifice. There's a couple of interesting little details that the scripture shares with us about this young boy, which you may not be aware of in just reading it over with a one-time reading. First of all, we don't know his name. His name is never revealed to us in the sacred scripture, and that's significant because often in scripture, when someone is unnamed, it is because that unnamed person is a symbol of all of us. Because he has not received a name, he's an example for what we should all do. Like this young boy who made this offering, we're called to make an offering for others in order that they may benefit from our sacrifice. The other interesting thing about this young boy is the scripture tells us this detail that the 5 loaves that he had, barley loaves. Barley loaves were the food of the poor. So we know right away that this young guy had this meal, but it could have been a sacrifice for him just to have that meal. Barley loaves were easy to obtain, but they're not great bread. It's the food of the poor. And so we get this image that this boy is the example for us. That although we may not want to, or it may be difficult for us, we are called to make sacrifices even in our poverty. Even when we have little, we are still called to give to those who have less. We are still called to give in sacrifice. Maureen and this young man in the sacred scripture are a great example to all of us. Because we're called to make a sacrifice that we offer for others for the benefit of the people around us. We can't selfishly hold on to what we have. I think also this young man in Scripture and Maureen give to us an example of the way we are called to participate in the celebration of the Mass, in the Eucharist. Because the multiplication of the bread and loaves is a symbol of the Eucharist. It is a Eucharistic symbol, a sign of the Mass. They show us how we should celebrate the Eucharist. Because during the Eucharist, we are called to make a sacrifice. And that sacrifice that we make is the sacrifice of our very selves. We are called, when we gather here each Sunday, to offer to God the gift of ourselves. Just like this young boy offered that bread and wine through the apostles, that bread and fish through the apostles to Jesus. Jesus took that bread and he blessed it. He multiplied it and he distributed it to others for their welfare. That's what we do at Mass. We offer ourselves to Jesus in the gift of the Eucharist. Jesus blesses our offerings. He blesses our sacrifice, and then he multiplies it and distributes our sacrifice to others for the good of their sanctification. What a beautiful image for us of how we're called to celebrate the Eucharist. We give. Jesus blesses our offering. He multiplies it, and then he distributes our offering of our hearts for the sanctification of his people. It's interesting, when our seminarian Adam and his friend continued walking along, it was not much longer until they found a young mother and her son. And they offered her, and she gratefully and happily took the pizza from them. It's interesting to me that even in this story, Maureen's offering was blessed and multiplied. Because instead of just her receiving a meal, a young mother and her child received a meal. We have to have the faith and the confidence that although we don't know exactly how Jesus operates, we don't know exactly what he does with our offering, that when we make that offering of ourselves with confidence in God, that he receives that offering with gratitude, that Jesus blesses our offering and multiplies it and distributes it to his people for their sanctification, for the salvation of their souls.